Hello, and welcome back to another episode of MoJo JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the one and only Powerpuff Girls slash JoJo's Bizarre Adventure recap and discussion podcast. I'm Raven.
And I'm Allison.
Today we are going to be discussing JoJo finally. We're going to be talking about part one, which is called Phantom Blood. And we're gonna be talking about the first two episodes, Dio the Invader and A Letter from the Past. I don't think there is any JoJo news. In terms of PPG news, turns out we are going to be getting a Halloween special for the new Powerpuff Girls comic. That is about it. I don't know the details about what the Halloween special is about. It's just kind of fun that they're finally getting a Halloween special, even though we have some spookier episodes.
I was wondering about that. Have there been Halloween episodes before?
No, there's a Christmas special, but they don't really do holiday specials other than that, I don't think. Let us start talking about the first episode, Dio the Invader. We start out in 1868 with the carriage wreck that kills JoJo's mom. Dario Brando and this woman, I'm not sure that she is his wife or his friend or whatever, they never really explain. They come across the wreckage and Dario intends to rob them. He sees the infamous stone mask and decides it's worthless and goes to pull out Mr. Joestar's teeth. When he goes to steal from Mr. Joestar, he wakes up thinking that Dario saved his and JoJo's lives, which he did not. Mr. Joestar vows to honor the debt they have incurred. Cut to JoJo and Dio's childhoods. JoJo is wealthy and well cared for with a loving but stern single father, while Dio is poor and has an abusive alcoholic father. And it seems like for money, Dio is like playing I forget if he was playing like chess or card games against like these older adults, but that seems to be like probably his main source of income. So that's what he has to work with. We see some bullies steal a girl named Arena's doll, and JoJo intervenes on her behalf, though they kick his ass when they realize he's a rich kid. JoJo gets mad at Arena for trying to help him up and says he didn't do it for her. He did it because he's a true gentleman, and a gentleman would protect anyone. Dio's father becomes ill and gives Dio a letter that will let him live with the Joestars as favor to Dario for saving Mr. Joestar's life. Dio spits on his father's grave as he prepares to leave his life of squalor behind. At first, I was kind of rooting for Dio, the scrappy kid who's been treated horribly his whole life. Now he gets to live with this kindly, rich family. That sort of changes when Dio actually gets there. He meets JoJo, immediately feels disdain for him, even though he's really friendly, then promptly kicks JoJo's dog Danny right in the face. JoJo is understandably upset, but Dio lies to Mr. Joestar and says it was an accident. This is only the beginning of Dio's shittiness. George Joestar shows Dio around his new home, and as soon as Mr. Joestar is out of sight, Dio snaps at JoJo for trying to help him with his luggage and threatens to break his wrist. But then he's okay with the servants taking his luggage up there, but not JoJo. Just wanted to be polite, help his new brother. We cut to a montage of Mr. Joestar favoring Dio over JoJo for being better at school and having better table manners than JoJo. JoJo is punished, and Dio practically fawned over. Dio also proves to be a better boxer than JoJo, though he fights dirty and puts his thumb in his eye. Dio says he will show the other kids his moves, but he lies to the other children and says that JoJo can't keep a secret. Thus begins JoJo's alienation among his peers. The other kids call him a snitch when they see him out and about. While JoJo is raging about Dio, a girl leaves him a basket of fruit with his missing handkerchief. It's Arena, the girl from before, and they soon become friends and start going on cute little dates. Till Dio discovers their romance and forcibly kisses her so her first kiss won't be with JoJo. She washes out her mouth with a dirty puddle of water in disgust, and Dio strikes her, ultimately decides she isn't worth raising his temper over. JoJo discovers that Dio did something shitty to Arena and confronts him at home. He beats the shit out of Dio and gets Dio's blood on the mysterious stone mask, which causes it to snap out of its spikes and fall to the ground. Mr. Joestar witnesses the fight and is mad at JoJo for beating Dio past the point where he could fight back. Though I think he'd be pissed at Dio too if he knew why JoJo was going after him. At least I hope so. He sends both boys to their rooms. We cut to one of the Joestar butlers lighting a furnace, only to hear something thumping inside, which turned out to be Danny, JoJo's beloved dog. JoJo arrives back at home to find Danny buried, and his father tells him that it was thought a burglar had panicked and put Danny in the furnace, which is a very weird explanation, and JoJo immediately jumps to the conclusion that Dio must have killed his dog, though there is technically no proof. We are then told that 7 years passed since the incident, and it cuts to the end theme song, which is "Roundabout" by Yes. So I don't know that we're doing like questions this round of things. I didn't prepare one, but my little summary basically for the whole episode that just I'm doing here is basically the creator of JoJo, Hirohiko Araki, basically said, "This is Jonathan. His hobbies are loving his dog and respecting women, so naturally his adopted brother's hobbies are kill Jonathan's dog and assault women. He's just a creep like that." Jonathan's name was inspired by Jonathan's, a Japanese restaurant that serves Western style food. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1 is usually known as Phantom Blood, but when it was originally released, it went by Jonathan Joestar, his youth. The name Phantom Blood was actually first coined in a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure art book entitled JoJo A Go-Go.
So, not having seen this before and not read any of the books, like the story for me just kind of jumped around a lot or was abruptly told, and then they looked like teenagers at least, but I think they were supposed to be 12, which was sort of odd.
Yeah, I think they were like 12 or 13. They're like middle schoolers, essentially.
And like the Dio kid is just like a sociopath. Because like who like burns alive someone's dog at 12
Yeah.
or 13?
Yeah, Dio is the fucking worst, and basically for no good reason, honestly.
And I mean, I know you said like it's a loving, the Mr. Joestar is a loving father, but I just feel like he's been mean to JoJo like the whole time, and for some reason favors Dio. Like, I understand, like, maybe you're kind of taking in an orphan and you want to make them feel good or special or whatever, but I don't think you do that at the cost of your other child.
No, absolutely not. I feel like he was a better dad to JoJo before Dio showed up, for sure, even though he was still kind of picking at him for his table manners. At least I hope he was. At least part of maybe why there's such a choppiness in the storytelling in the beginning is I'm not sure how long at this point that Hirohiko Araki was a manga writer and artist, but like at this point he was only like a little bit older than me. Like I think he was like 27 or something. So he's a younger dude. I'll cut him some slack for some of that for some of the stuff, like some of the choppiness and
It,
such.
it gets better as he goes along, you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. He gets better at like a lot of different things as it goes along, I feel like. JoJo's been around since like I want to say like 87 too. He's been writing it like this whole time. He took like one break between parts 8 and 9.
So does this match up to the books, or is there some deviations, or
Maybe they just cut out a few things. They didn't really change much, I don't feel like. They just like certain details were left out. And there's like this whole thing at the beginning of the first issue in volume 1 where we kind of see the stone mask being used by like this Aztec dude, and he's like sacrificing this lady and like putting her blood on the mask, and that's not in the anime at all.
and this mask is supposed to have belonged to the mother, right?
Correct, yes, it belonged to JoJo's mom.
So does the dad not know like what it does or that much about it, or
I'm assuming so. I'm not sure he really gets. Well, later on, he might see the mask. As far as I know, he doesn't know what the mask does at all, just that it belonged to his wife.
okay. Okay, so I'm jumping in with the second episode, A Letter from the Past. Hopefully, this isn't too choppy. So this is supposed to be 7 years later, and they kind of talk about Jack the Ripper and all the horrible things that he does, but then they mention that somehow JoJo and Dio were worse. And I'm assuming it has to do with the mask.
Yes.
They show the two of them playing, I'm not sure if it was football or rugby.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I put rugby in my notes because I don't know if football was even invented yet.
Yeah.
And it's set, in part one is set in England. I don't think we said that other than like Jack the Ripper, but they also might not have football there other than what we call soccer over here.
They just seemed like they were wearing more modern outfits. I don't know, it kind of threw me off. The two of them appear very friendly, which surprised me. I'm not, because I was thinking, how can JoJo get past the fact that he like burned his dog alive, because we're skipping 7 years. It says that in school Dio was studying law, which is funny, maybe, and JoJo archaeology. And like JoJo is just trying to keep the peace with Dio, but he's not going to forget or forgive the past. We find that Dio is after the Joestar fortune, which is not a big surprise. And then Father Joestar is ill. He had a cold, but it has worsened. So JoJo is kind of like, it was just a cold. Why is he like bedridden? It shows. I think it showed JoJo. He drips blood on the mask, and the thorns come out. And then while he's doing that, he sees Dio bringing the father medicine up the stairs. Then JoJo finds a letter from Dio's dad, which describes him being sick with similar symptoms that as JoJo's dad. So he's just wondering if like Dio is making his father sick. And then JoJo makes Dio swear on his dad that he's not poisoning Father Joestar. But then Dio just kind of explodes and says that his dad deserved to die.
He kind of did.
JoJo throws Dio off the stairs, and he decides he's going to investigate the medicine. Dio hates his father. JoJo tells his father to only take medicine from doctors. And because the medicine from the medicine or poison from Dio has stopped, but his father is still sick, JoJo thinks that his father might require an antidote to get better. Dio intends to kill JoJo if he finds out the truth. So I'm not totally sure where JoJo goes.
He goes to London.
Okay. So he goes to a university there, and they couldn't identify the medicine or poison, but they said it probably came from the Orient. So JoJo goes to, is it Ogre Street?
Yes, Ogre Street.
And he's attacked by three dudes that kind of look like they're dressed like jesters, and like JoJo just grabs like this blade of this knife and threatens to kick the dude in the crotch. He keeps asking them for an Asian apothecary. I think they try to mince him with the one guy has like blades on his hat, but JoJo is determined. And I guess like JoJo's like super strong and stuff. He does like defending himself. He doesn't hurt the guys too bad. He just kind of like flings them, but he doesn't kill them. So the one dude's like real impressed that he didn't harm them. So he like kind of tells the guys to back off. And then JoJo is able to explain he's trying to help his father, and they point him to an apothecary. So then we see Dio again. He's drinking and worried whether JoJo will succeed in finding out the truth. This stranger kind of comes after him, and he puts the mask on the stranger, and the thorns come out, and the mask glows and kills him. But then the man gets up, and when the mask comes off, he is a monster. So he kind of looks like a vampire or a zombie, maybe, because he rose from the dead. That's why I was thinking
Yeah.
zombie. but he has sharp teeth and great strength. Dio tries to jump in the river, but the stranger puts his fingers kind of like on his neck and sort of drains his blood, starts draining his blood that way, which is, I've never seen a vampire portrayed that way before.
Yeah, no, I haven't either. It like sticks his like fingers under his skin. It's really weird.
I'm like, what's the point of having the sharp teeth if you're just using your fingers? But
Yeah.
so then I guess because the dude's like a new vampire, he doesn't realize he's supposed to be scared of the sun. So the sun comes out and the man disintegrates. And then, like, the next thing we know, JoJo has returned, he says, with proof of poisoning. And again, the end credits with the song from Yes. And I'm sorry that my description maybe wasn't the greatest.
It's okay.
I'm just not totally like some of it I'm just sort of like confused what's going on. Like I don't know. The storytelling is just kind of throwing me off a little bit, but
That's valid, especially towards like probably the first. This and I don't know if part two is as bad about some of that stuff, but yeah, like towards the beginning, it might be a little bit more confusing. Just because like Rocky was newer to writing at that point.
I don't know. I might have left out some details or got some things wrong there, but I don't know if you have things to correct from what I said.
I guess one thing I wanted to talk about is how when Mr. Joestar is sick and they're JoJo's like, hey, this is weird. It seemed like it was a cold, like he's like, you should go to the hospital. And Dio's like, no, the hospitals will only take your money. I'm like, that should have been like, Mr. Joestar should have maybe been like, that's so weird that you don't want me to go to the hospital. That should have been a little hint there for him.
I mean, the guy's like wealthy, so. But
Yeah.
he did have a lot of. Weren't there like four doctors though, or something? Because I remember they were like,
There may have been.
only take medicine from the doctors, and there was like four dudes. So I mean, he is being looked after, but I guess they just didn't deduce that maybe he was being poisoned.
Yes, and repeatedly poisoned.
And then where did Dio? Well, he poisoned his dad with it, right?
Yes.
But he poisoned his dad when he was 12 or 13 with the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So where did he get it back then? How, I mean, I know you don't know the answer maybe, but like I'm just like where
I'm assuming from the same place.
kind of like
He's lucky it's still open like 7 years later.
not Diagon Alley, but what's the bad section of Diagon Alley?
Nocturne Alley.
It's like the Nocturne Alley, like where or the underground, the black market.
Yeah, black market is.
So he had to be pretty scrappy or like have
Yeah.
something to offer because he had to have some sort of money to
I'm assuming he got the money from gambling as he was kind of shown in the first episode.
or like maybe he did some research and like figured out some. I know it was like an Asian apothecary, but like I don't know how good libraries were. Probably they weren't. I don't know. But like
Yeah.
doing research on like what plants I could use to poison my daddy.
Yeah. Honestly, though, Mr. Brando did probably deserve to be poisoned. He seemed like some bitch.
Well, yeah, because they were gonna probably leave that baby to die. Like in the first episode,
Yeah.
him and that woman would probably have left poor little JoJo to die if Mr. Joestar had not woken up.
Yeah, and then just the way he treated Dio too, like, which might have contributed to Dio's own personal shittiness, but
Yeah, I mean, maybe he just thinks everybody's crappy,
perhaps.
and maybe his father surrounded himself with crappy people too. So
Yeah.
he doesn't know that there's or realize that there's nice people, or doesn't think niceness is genuine. Maybe.
Yeah, or he just uses it as like a weakness or something.
Yeah. Like I get his dad had that letter to send ahead and was promised. Well, I don't know what he was promised. Like as far as like repayment, you would think he would have just given what is his name? What's the dad? Dio's father's name.
Dario.
would have just given Dario some sort of reward and then moved on. Why it
Yeah,
had to do with like, I will raise your son after you die. Because
it was very specific.
how did Dio realize if he killed his dad that he would get to go have this rich, posh life? Like it's
Yeah, that is kind of like maybe he just like talked or bragged about it like he is this favor from this rich dude. I'm actually surprised, like since he was such a selfish asshole, like he didn't turn it in earlier and that he actually used it for Dio.
yeah, that he could have had like, I don't know what would have been a lot of money back then, but some sort of monetary prize and then blown it on, fancy clothes or something.
Yeah.
Booze.
Yeah, possibly booze. It seemed like he was a drinker.
So I mean, I guess you already know. I'm just not sure what someone would do with this mask because if either of the boys were to try to wear it, it basically kills them and turns them into a vampire. So, I mean, are we just putting this on our enemies? I guess I am curious as to what is going to happen with the mask. I feel like I mean, I'm thinking if JoJo had discovered this, he would probably like go bury it in the backyard, but it's Dio that now knows what it does,
Yeah.
and he's not a nice person.
Yeah, he's not a very good young man. It's like he's the worst. I keep saying that, but he's the worst.
And then so JoJo has returned with proof of poisoning. Will the dad believe it though?
Yeah, he heavily favors Dio.
Will
So
Dio be able to squirm out of it some way? Will he try to kill JoJo? I'm sort of surprised he hasn't tried to kill JoJo before and tried
honestly,
to make it look like an accident
yeah.
or poisons JoJo.
Or honestly, that he didn't try to poison Mr. Joestar earlier. Like waited until they're like in college to do it.
Well, but maybe if they're too young, you might have to have someone looking over you if you inherit a
Yeah.
big fortune, like a lawyer or something.
Maybe, yeah. So we waited till they're like 19 or 20 or however old they are at this point. It's like, now's my chance.
Because the two of them would have to split the fortune if Dio's even getting anything, because he's not the biological child. Like back then, I don't know. I could see if it was like he was childless and then he took in Dio, but he has a son.
Yeah.
So you would think he would want to knock off JoJo just so there wasn't any sort of splitting or sharing. But and then did we see the girl, what is her name, Irina, in this episode?
I don't think she is in the second episode.
Does she still exist in the story or?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, she probably doesn't want to hang out with JoJo because Dio's like a creep.
Absolute creep. At just 12 or 13. I don't know how you can be a middle schooler and already be that horrible.
Yeah, so I could see like until like they're at least living in separate houses or something that she probably wouldn't, even if she still fancies him, would want to be in JoJo's life because of Dio.
Yeah,
But I could be
that's
wrong
fair.
because I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's a very unpredictable show too. And there's always like maybe not as much towards the beginning here, but there's always like absolutely wild cliffhangers, and I would always be like, "Holy shit, how are they going to get out of this one?" Like in a way that cliffhangers don't normally get me. Like I might be like, "Oh man, I have to wait a week to see what happens," but then I'm just like, "What's going to happen? What's going to happen?" And luckily there are when I started watching, there were enough episodes that I could keep going, and I did not have to wait a week because I started watching it when they put season 1 on Netflix, so I got to watch
So you
all
could binge
the yeah
if you wanted to.
yeah So there's not a ton of trivia really on Wikipedia or even IMDb for the show. It might be better to look. We may have to look maybe actually at the section for the manga, but I have a tiny bit of trivia. So for this episode, in every language but Arabic, the title of the episode still translates to a letter from the past, but in Arabic it's called a message from the past, which I know is not that big of a difference, but I thought it was kind of funny that that was the only one that like changed the wording a little bit. And then, of course, the dude who is the leader of the gang from Ogre Street, his name is Robert E.O. Speedwagon, and he is, of course, named after REO Speedwagon. And this is only the beginning of characters being named after bands
Oh,
and musicians, and later on, like fashion shit too. That's a bit later though.
like Dio, is he like a famous guitar player or something, or am I being stupid?
I think technically, there's Rodney James Dio, which is I believe who his namesake is, and then Brando he probably picked from Marlon Brando. I'm sure he's just like Dio will be possibly Italian, even though they live in England. His namesake, and then I guess the band or whatever just goes by Dio. So I immediately clocked that when I first started watching, but I didn't know the extent it was going to get to. So I guess that is the end of our episode here. Thank you so much for giving it a listen. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you want to see what's coming up next, follow along, hit that subscribe button, give us a review. If you're watching this or listening to it rather on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And I guess we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.